You know, we have this idea that our lives are defined by these huge lightning strike moments. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the most powerful force shaping your future isn't some big event, but the small, quiet choices you're making right now, today?
It's a feeling I think we've all had, that gut punch of a moment when you just realize something's off. You were climbing, right? You were making progress, moving towards something better. And then, life did what life does. Maybe it was a small disruption, an illness, or hey, even just hitting the snooze button one too many times. You tell yourself, oh, it's just this once. But then, once quietly becomes the new normal.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does that happen? How does that thing that used to be second nature, that discipline you once had, suddenly feel like trying to climb a mountain in your bare feet? That little stumble, that brief pause, it somehow turns into a place you live. So how do we get stuck there? Let's dig in.
Well, it all starts with this incredibly precious and honestly super fragile thing called momentum. I like to think of it as a forgotten fire.
Think about it. A fire takes real effort to build, right? You gotta gather the wood, you gotta get it lit, and then you have to tend to it to keep it going. But all it takes is a single moment of neglect for it to flicker and die out. And when you're sitting there in the dark, that's when your mind starts playing tricks on you. It whispers things like, what's the point anyway? Or, were you ever really that person to begin with?
Because here's the secret most people don't get. Your mind doesn't fight for your potential. It fights for your comfort. Your biology is hardwired to keep you safe. Society finds it a whole lot easier if you just, blend in. Heck, even the people who love you the most have this natural instinct to want you to be secure. All of these forces are like gravity, pulling you toward the status quo. They don't pull you toward excellence. Excellence, that's a journey you have to personally greenlight for yourself.
And deciding to go on that journey, well, that leads you right into what Teddy Roosevelt famously called the arena of life. And in this arena, you really only have one fundamental choice to make. Are you going to be the critic sitting up in the stands, or are you going to be the fighter down on the floor?
So let's look at these two paths. The critic, they stay safe in the stands. They get to observe, they get to criticize, but they're completely separate from any real victory or any real defeat. It's a life of watching, not doing. It's kind of like this permanent purgatory, where, yeah, you're safe from failure, but you're also completely walled off from real joy. The fighter, on the other hand, they climb into the arena. They take the risks. And yeah, that means they feel the crushing lows, but they also get to experience the absolute highest of highs. It's in that mess, in that struggle, that they find real meaning and true transformation.
So here's the bottom line. It's okay to be loved, and you know what? It's even okay to be hated. The one thing you don't want to be is just tolerated. Merely existing, that's just depriving yourself of all the beauty life has to offer because you were too scared of the turbulence. So what happens when you do step into that arena and you face that storm that you know is coming? You might think it's there to break you, but what if its purpose is something else entirely?
I want you to picture an old wooden bridge, right? It's stretching across this really deep valley. For years, it's been there, sturdy, reliable, but it's never really been tested. Then, one day, this massive, violent storm rolls in. The wind is howling, the river below is raging, and all the people in the town are just watching, totally convinced it's gonna snap.
But the bridge doesn't break. The wood groans, sure, but it holds. The ropes stretch, but they don't snap. You see, the storm didn't make the bridge weak. It showed everyone how incredibly strong it had been the entire time. And it's the exact same for you. Hardship doesn't create your capacity. It reveals it. Pressure doesn't break you. It proves your endurance. You were built for this moment. The greatest parts of who you are, they're just sitting there, waiting for your permission to come out and shine.
And I really want you to let that sink in. When your world gets completely flipped upside down, when that person you thought was forever isn't, when a health issue suddenly makes simple things complicated, you are stronger than you think you are. You're strong enough to endure. You're strong enough to make it through, right now and always.
Okay, so knowing you have this incredible strength is one thing, but actually activating it, that's a whole different ballgame. And it all starts with one of the most powerful choices you'll ever make, the choice to take ownership instead of laying blame. When you're at what feels like rock bottom, you basically have two options. You can point your finger outward, blame the world, transfer your pain onto someone else, and just sit there and wait for someone to come save you. Or you can point inward. You can tap into that internal strength we were just talking about, and you can decide to build what wasn't there before.
Look, this has nothing to do with who's at fault. It's not about blame at all. It's about taking your power back.
It's about looking at your situation, no matter how unfair it feels, and saying this to yourself: I didn't put myself here, but I sure as hell can take myself where I want to go. Think of your life like a car. It's this complex, amazing machine. But guess what? That car is not going anywhere without an engine. Your personal agency, that willingness to own your situation and ask, okay, what can I do about this? That is the engine. Without it, you are parked. Period. Everything starts right there.
So, you've decided, you're taking ownership, you're ready to start the engine. But let's be honest, just turning the key can be the hardest part, right? Especially when you're scared and you feel like you have no idea what you're doing. And that brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle, finding the courage to take that first, messy, imperfect step.
Let me tell you a quick story. I have a friend, his name is Clayton. And Clayton absolutely loves to dance, but it's not something people really knew him for. So one day, he films this video of himself dancing his heart out. But then he's just terrified to post it online. He's paralyzed by this fear of what people will say, that they'll criticize him or laugh at him. And he's just thinking, how can I soften this blow?
For 40 minutes, he just stares at his phone. Then he gets an idea. He decides he's going to write this long philosophical essay about vulnerability and post it along with the video. His hope was that people would comment on the smart essay and just ignore the dancing. He built himself a hedge, a little safety net, and then he hit post. Now, today he looks back at that and he's kind of embarrassed by the hedge, but he's totally missing the point. Back then, that hedge wasn't a weakness. It was an act of incredible courage. It was everything he had in that moment.
And this is the key for you. The person you will be in the future, they are going to look back at the person you are right now, scared, maybe a little uncertain, feeling stuck, and they're going to smile. They are going to thank you for finding the courage to set sail even when you felt totally unprepared. That messy, imperfect start, it was everything.
That beginning might not feel like your best work. You might feel like you're only giving, 40%. But there's a really powerful way to think about that number.
When 40% is all you have to give in that moment, then that 40% is your 100%. That was your personal Mount Everest on that day, and you climbed it. Perfection isn't about flawless execution. It's in the beautiful, courageous act of beginning, even through all the imperfection.
So as we wrap up, I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. What imperfect, messy, maybe even clumsy first step are you going to take today? What little seed are you going to plant knowing that a clumsy start is the only way anything beautiful ever really grows?
What if I told you that the very thing you've been taught to avoid, the one thing you fear the most, is actually the key to everything you've ever wanted? Today, we're not just talking about failure. We're tearing down the entire idea that failure is the end. We're going to rebuild it into what it truly is, a powerful, practical framework for action. So let's get started by dismantling that fear, brick by painful brick.
Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't just saying failure is okay, or that it's something to learn from. No. The idea here is that failure is a biological necessity for a life that's truly lived. To try and avoid failure is literally like holding your breath. You're cutting yourself off from the very element you need to grow, to experience, to live. It's the air that poets, artists, and creators breathe to bring their work to life. Every single setback, every so-called failure is just an exhale that makes room for the next creative breath.
So, how do we start breathing again? Well, it all begins by completely reframing what it means to fail. Let's dive into this first concept, learning to see failure not as a mistake, but as the medium for your own creation.
I want you to imagine yourself standing in front of a giant, blank wall. Now, every time you try something and it doesn't quite work out, you're not erasing anything, you're not ruining the wall, you are making a mark. You're adding a color, a new texture, you are making the very first stroke of a painting that you can't even see yet.
When you look at it up close, that one mark, it might just look like a mistake, a smudge. It could be misunderstood, maybe even scoffed at or ridiculed by others. And it's so easy to just hang your head and feel disappointed when all you can see is that one single imperfect splash of paint. But if that's all you see, you are missing the entire point. You're completely oblivious to the fact that you're in the middle of making something truly meaningful. This whole process, it unfolds in stages. First, you just have to take a chance. You make a mark. Then you see the immediate, maybe imperfect result, the smudge. But here's the crucial step. You have to trust the process. You have to understand that each mark gives meaning to the one that came before it.
And then, over time, all these individual, seemingly trivial marks, they combine to form a mural. Your failures become the very fabric of your masterpiece.
And that right there, that is the ultimate challenge, isn't it? Can you maintain faith in what you can't yet see? Can you look at a wall full of smudges and trust that a masterpiece is emerging? It takes real courage to keep your eyes locked on that vision when all you can see are the imperfections right in front of you. And it takes incredible strength to cherish your failures while everyone else is busy trying to hide theirs.
But okay, trusting the process requires you to get over the fear of making a mark in the first place. So the question is, how do we conquer that paralyzing fear of what if? The source material gives this fantastic story. Picture this: a hiker is up on a mountain enjoying this absolutely beautiful view, but then she suddenly remembers seeing a sign in the parking lot, a sign warning that a gate closes at sunset. And just like that, panic sets in. She completely abandons this beautiful moment and starts sprinting down the mountain, frantic, out of breath, totally consumed by the fear of being locked in.
And this just perfectly illustrates the lunacy of our own worst-case scenarios. In her mind, she's flashing to this absurd image of being trapped, starving, writing a final farewell note. But the reality, the worst possible outcome she was actually facing, was simply having to call someone to come open the gate, a minor inconvenience. But see, fear doesn't deal in logic, it deals in catastrophe.
So the crucial point is this: that hiker missed one of the most beautiful sunsets of her entire life because she was terrified of a trivial, solvable, and ultimately imaginary problem. She gave up a world of beauty and possibility because she bowed down to a single, minor inconvenience. So the question for us is, how many sunsets are we missing in our own lives for the exact same reason?
Okay, so you've decided to face the fear. You're gonna make your mark. But what happens when the journey gets hard? When that climb feels absolutely endless and you just want to quit? This next concept is a powerful tool for endurance.
So the source introduces this brilliant metaphor of the flat ground. Think about it. On even the steepest, most brutal mountain climb, there are always these little 10-second stretches where the ground just flattens out. It's not the destination, not by a long shot. It's just a tiny gift, a moment to reset. And trust me, when you're gasping for air, 10 seconds can feel like an eternity.
Now this is the critical mindset shift. We break because we fall for the illusion that the pain is going to last forever. But it doesn't. Look, you're not supposed to endure the entire overwhelming journey all at once. That's impossible. Your only job is to make it to the next patch of flat ground. Just get to that next moment where you can catch your breath.
You know, this is exactly how ultramarathon runners conquer these impossible distances. They are not thinking about mile 100. Of course not. They are focused entirely on getting to the next aid station. That's it. A place where they can refuel and regroup. Life is not a 100-mile sentence of suffering. It's a series of aid stations. You conquer the moment that's right in front of you, and you will eventually conquer the entire mountain.
Finally, let's talk about what all of this really requires. Because every dream, every masterpiece, every conquered mountain, it has a cost. And you have to be willing to pay it.
There's this incredibly powerful story of Shaq talking to his son, who says he wants to be in the NBA. And Shaq, he doesn't talk about the fame or the championships. He talks about sacrifice. He asks his son, how many of your birthdays did I miss? How many of your games did I miss? He was teaching him a fundamental lesson. Every single dream has a toll booth. And this is the fundamental trade-off. You want to build a business? The price is going to be sleepless nights. You want to forge a new identity? Well, the price is your current certainty and comfort. Dreams demand payment, and they demand it up front. So the question isn't if you'll pay a price. The real question is whether the life waiting for you on the other side is worth that price.
And when you're in that season of sacrifice, when it really feels like you're losing, like you're missing out on everything, I want you to remember this powerful reframe. You are not losing, you are investing. You are exchanging the comfort of now for the legacy of later. You are planting seeds today that will one day grow into entire forests.
See, this isn't about limitation. It's about sequence. It's about patience. Shaq missed those birthdays so that he could provide for his family's future. He paid the price then, so he could have the time and the resources now. It's all about choosing your all for this season so you can build the foundation for your next one.
And so, this is where we end. There comes a time when it is now or never. A time when you finally realize that staying comfortable, that waiting for the perfect moment, it costs you far more than stepping out and just making your mark. So look at that blank wall in front of you.
Waiting is the most expensive choice you can possibly make. What will you reach for?
You are an architect. Whether you realize it or not, you're building something every single day. The world around you, it's just the raw material. The only question that really matters is this: what are you going to build? This right here, this is the fundamental choice. See, pain can become your power. Fear can become your fuel. And rejection, if you're willing to really look it in the eye, it can be the very spark that ignites a whole new beginning. The choice, it's always yours. You know, there's an old story that just perfectly illustrates this choice. It's about a farmer whose donkey falls into a deep, dry well. The animal is trapped, it's crying for hours, and the farmer, well, after looking at the situation, he just doesn't see any way to get it out. So he makes a pretty terrible decision. He grabs a shovel and just starts throwing dirt into the well. His reasoning is that he doesn't want the poor animal to suffer, so it's kinder to just bury it quickly. And this is that moment in life, right? The moments that feel like you're being buried alive. But then, something absolutely remarkable happens. As that first shovelful of dirt hits the donkey's back, it doesn't just surrender. With every single load that was meant to crush it, it does something completely unexpected. It violently shakes the dirt off its back. And each time it shakes that dirt off, it takes a step up. This completely reframes the entire problem. The very thing that was meant to be its grave became the platform it used to climb. Shovelful by shovelful, it kept stepping up until eventually it just walked right out of that well. So maybe you feel like you're being buried right now, under the weight of stress or failure or what other people expect of you. But listen, that pain wasn't sent to break you. It was sent to reveal you. The dirt is falling for sure, but you get to choose what you do with it. And that choice brings us to this huge fork in the road of life. It's the decision between two profoundly different ways of seeing yourself and really the entire world around you. On one path, you've got the victim mindset. It's a world built on blame, on waiting for someone else or something else to change. It's living in this prison of if only. But on the other path stands the architect. And that mindset is built on the solid bedrock of accountability. An architect doesn't wait, an architect builds. They don't ask if only, they ask what can I do? Here's the crucial thing to get. The world doesn't owe you a thing. It's not your friend, but here's the kicker, it's not your enemy either. It is completely indifferent. Think of it like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a beautiful home, or you can use it to tear one down. The power to build or destroy is all in how you choose to wield the tool. So if you're going to wield this power, if you're going to be the architect, you need the right tools. And they aren't out there in the world. They're inside you. They are the two essential forces I call heart and hustle. Let's start with hustle. Think about it like this. You're at the end of a punishing workout. The timer hits 0, but instead of stopping, you decide to add just 22 more seconds. In those extra seconds, in that space where you think you've got nothing left to give, that is precisely where growth happens. You are literally stretching your limits and proving to yourself that the end is never really the end. But pure hustle, that's not enough. As Jeff Bezos says here, the biggest, most important life-altering decisions, the ones that set your entire direction, they aren't made with a spreadsheet. They're made with heart, with intuition. That deep primal feeling in your gut that just says, this is the way, this is where I need to go. And this is where their partnership is so brilliant. See, these two forces, they need each other to work. Your heart, it selects the destination. It picks your North Star, the thing that gives your life meaning. Then your hustle comes in. It uses cold, hard analysis to figure out the most effective, most efficient path to get you there. So, with these tools in hand, we can now look at the climb itself. Becoming the person you're meant to be is a process, and the path is actually simple. But you have to remember, simple is not the same as easy. It's a cycle of growth that you can repeat over and over and over again. It all starts with the realization that yesterday's ceiling has just become today's floor. From there, you have to acquire the courage to step into the unknown all over again, and you will make mistakes. That's not failure, that's your curriculum. This part requires you to trust the process, to believe in your direction, even when you can't see immediate results. And finally, you celebrate reaching that new height, you take a breath, and you adjust. Because that mountaintop, it's just your new starting line. The cycle begins again. And as you walk this path, I want you to burn this into your mind. The pain of discipline, the effort, the early mornings, those extra 22 seconds, it weighs ounces. But the pain of regret, of looking back at a life you didn't live and thinking, if only, that weighs tons.
You've probably heard that old saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Well, the second best time is right now. Every choice you make today can become that back then moment, that single point that changed everything. You don't have to see the whole path. You just have to begin. So, will you?